Welcome to Executives at the Edge, Enterprise Edition, the podcast from Amplify, where enterprise leaders share bold ideas and practical strategies for navigating the AI-powered digital economy. I'm your host, Pascal Menezes. In each episode, we explore how enterprises are securing, automating, and scaling digital services across today's complex multi-cloud landscape. Well, I'm really so excited for this first edition called our Enterprise Edition for Executives at the Edge. And today I'm very, very fortunate, and we are very, very fortunate to have Amo Mann. He's the Chief Architect for Cloud and Network for Accenture. Amo, welcome to Executives at the Edge. And for our audience, can you just tell a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you do at Accenture, really?
Thank you, Pascal. Excited to be on here. So my name's Amo Mann from Accenture. I'm the Chief Architect across Cloud, Network, and AI infrastructure. I focus on our strategy and architecture patterns for how internal Accenture consumes IT. We're around 800,000 people globally. We're across 400 sites, so big network, a lot of cloud consumption is how we consume technology.
This is very fascinating. So for our listeners, a little bit more. So we talked about you have an internet-first strategy. Can you articulate that better?
Yes. So when we look at our network journey, we were your traditional MPLS shop, going back to about in the late 2000s. Pre-COVID, we shifted to an internet-first strategy because what we found is with the rapid adoption to cloud and how we were consuming Teams, we found that 98% of our connections were going natively over the internet. So how could I do that more cheaper, more cost effectively? The cheapest and most cost effective way of shifting from MPLS to internet with a 98% internet first approach was to actually go internet first. So we shifted all of our connections to consume natively over the internet. And this was something that was only made achievable because we had very close relationships with our application teams, because the application architecture is very important to how you consume, how you secure your applications. But I think the cloud made that happen for us as well, because if all my connections are going to the cloud over the internet, it just made sense to do that.
So what you're saying is you moved all your workloads to the cloud.
Yep.
They have the backbone, global backbone. For all of these guys like GCP, Microsoft, they have a one hop to most ISPs.
Correct.
Because Google has a YouTube and they have to do that. And Microsoft has Windows Update, so they've made those connections. So basically it's one hop, no transit networks. You get into the backbone of Microsoft, which gets good quality, and you can hit all your workloads.
Correct.
Is that kind of what you figured out?
100%, yeah. I see the internet as my corporate core now. To connect all of my users, all of my assets. I want to refer to my assets, all my Accenture assets, so my apps, my people, with unlimited bandwidth. Whether you're coming off 5G, DSL, direct internet access, that's all you really need. I can connect from any device, anywhere.
And so it's a very, very, very advanced move. I think more than what people have been thinking. Because a lot of times people are thinking SD-WAN on top of that. But your idea is no, just big enough internet pipe. So you're buying DIA, dedicated internet access. And do you do any broadband or just smaller offices?
No, we have like 5G broadband, connections and stuff in order to do that. But again, the principle here is so long as you have an internet connection, whether it's broadband, whether it's direct internet access, whether it's 5G mobile, I don't really care, right? As long as you have the access to it, which is what gives us a lot of flexibility. It's interesting you mentioned SD-WAN, because the time that we went with this internet first approach, SD-WAN was starting to sort of ramp up. We actually washed away the business case for SD-WAN because of the cost price that we were getting the connections for. But more importantly, because we had a lot of the security already baked into the application layer and a zero trust model in place already, we didn't really need a lot of the SD-WAN capabilities that we needed.
Wow, very fascinating. So you were ahead of zero trust. So let's just talk about cybersecurity, because I think it's a very important aspect.
Yes.
So from the transport level, you moved your workloads to the cloud using an internet-first approach. Don't need an overlay like SD-WAN for application assurance. And most of your workloads, because of the way the hyperscalers have done it, works pretty flawless. Now, the security layer, tell us more about the cybersecurity layer.
Yeah, so the security layer, we shifted left, right? So we start to scan all of our code. We started to use multi-factor authentication that goes across the native internet, proxies, leveraging the cloud providers' security capabilities, because my workloads are actually in the cloud. There's no better security provider than the cloud providers, right? When it comes to them providing you edge protection. I mean, Google, they probably get DDoS attacked all the time, right?
Yeah, you're talking about DDoS, because
yeah.
they don't provide like firewalls. You have to buy that and put it into your...
Yes and no, right? Because it comes down to which perspective. Yes, you can buy third-party firewalls, you know, your Palas, your Fortinets, and spin up as an NFV in the public cloud.
Yeah.
Or you can just consume their firewall gateways and their security gateways natively and consume that, right? Which is what we do, because we want to use the cloud providers' technologies to their advantages, right? The moment we go in there and we shoehorn a third-party product in there, in my opinion, you lose all the advantage of going to the cloud, right? You lose the agility, you lose the scale. So now we have a way, I mean, we call it Cloud 2.0. So our first iteration of the cloud was Journey to the Cloud, where we moved our workloads. Our second iteration is living in the cloud, right? Because if I really want to benefit from all of the capabilities of the cloud, I want to be able to consume things as natively as possible. But more importantly, that then enables me to consume this as a service, right? So this is where and I'm sure we'll come on to this, but this is where we shifted from consuming things as a service for application workloads to consuming network as a service end-to-end, which is where we're at with things like Cloud WAN and services like that.
Oh, okay, so it's like virtual and Cloud WAN. You're using all that.
Yes, we actually helped co-create that with Amazon and Azure. Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
It was an interesting conversation. That was actually how it started. It was so when COVID hit, we had a backbone through carrier neutral facilities, using a lot of Ethernet over SONET circuits. And when COVID hit, I mean, our utilization on our backbone went down to 2%.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I had 800,000 people still operating, working, servicing their clients. And ironically, we were in a pub. And I was like, guys, there's got to be a better way for us to do this, right? If I can consume VMs as and when I need them, why can't I consume network connectivity to do that? So I started to stitch together transit gateways together and leverage the backbones, because at that point, AWS released peering and Microsoft did that. And then their product BU said, well, Amo, what are you trying to do here? I go, well, this is what I want to do. They go, all right, let's co-create the product and let's get this working. And that's how Cloud WAN sort of came about. We actually won a CIO 100 award for that 3 years ago. So it was recognized in the industry. So now all of a sudden, I went from 27 carrier neutral facilities with the fact that I went to internet first and the fact that I'm using the cloud providers' peering capabilities, I'm down to 4 globally now.
But you use multi-cloud, you use
Correct.
all of them, and
Yes.
then you...
Yes.
Okay, so good. And just to be clear, are you using IaaS workloads or using SaaS or both?
Both.
So you put your mission critical workloads on IaaS, infrastructures and VNets and VPCs?
Yes.
And then you also supply and consume SaaS services
Correct.
directly too?
Yeah, Salesforce, SAPs.
Salesforce or SAP or Office 365 and things like that. Okay, very interesting. And let's go back to the cybersecurity layer, because most of them will give you protection from DDoS for sure, right, into your VNets and VPCs. But then you have to either buy their native security postures, right, cybersecurity postures, or you buy third-party markets ones. What's your thoughts on that?
So I think the best thing to do is a combination of both, right? Because I think what you find here is when it comes to security posture, your cloud providers for their own types of workloads are typically ahead because they have access to their data quicker than what they probably do with a third party. Now, yeah, we use things like CSPMs and stuff to be able to, check your homework, so to put it, right? So I think a combination of both is useful, with logs coming from the cloud native capabilities, because it is literally a switch that you can turn on. Yes, you pay for it, but it's a nominal cost, right? But then having a big brother like, a Palo Alto or a Microsoft Sentinel checking your overall security landscape, correlating those logs together and then giving you an output is the approach that we take. So we take a balanced approach from using both third parties and leveraging the cloud native capabilities as well.
But it's a DIY, right? So it's a do-it-yourself.
Yes.
Because you don't really trust anybody else to do it for you because
Correct.
of cybersecurity.
Correct.
So you've got a big cybersecurity team in practice?
We have a cybersecurity team. We have a SOC that we own and manage, and then we work with our partners very closely, right, to say, right, these new services are coming up. How do we secure them? We're in deep conversations as we're enabling AI workloads and AI connectivity. How do I secure this, right? So do I do that with an NVIDIA? Do I do that with Google? Do I do that with Azure? It's going to differ, right? I mean, the principles will be the same, but how those solutions are executed will differ from cloud to cloud. But the third parties provide you that abstraction layer to consolidate everything together.
Yeah, very fascinating architecture. I mean, very modern. Now, we'll keep evolving because we got to get to AI too. But let's keep on the cybersecurity. So you talked about zero trust. You were saying you were doing zero trust principles a long time ago. Now, you don't use ZTNA, but you use zero trust policies and principles.
Correct.
And so you handle the east-west and all the policies. How is that working for you?
It's working. I mean, like I said, we've been doing this for a long time. I think one thing we've had and what's enabled us to do this is governance of our estate. And let me explain why that's important. We know and we own, manage, and operate every single laptop that's within Accenture. And based on that, I know how your iOS version is, are you compliant to my security, who you are and what you want to access. So now that I know who you are and what you want to access, leveraging the tools, I can now start to control your data in terms of what you want to access. So I start to have that zero. So that was something very important because a lot of, we speak to I spoke to more than 900 clients this year between our team. And because one of the other things we do is we have this concept of customer zero, where we try and use internal IT as its own best credential. So when we're talking to other enterprises, one of the things we realize around the security landscape is a lot of people don't have the overarching governance of end-to-end, right? From endpoint, from end user accessing it to the application. We fortunately do because it's all under one tower. So by having that, that's how we start to get the zero trust principles in place without actually having to have a pure, zero trust provider to be able to provide that to us.
Yeah, very interesting. Now, do you also supply, SASE's being big. Do you own kind of like your own private SASE cloud?
So again, our principle is to consume things as a service as much as possible, right? I want to buy versus build, which is an interesting thing because I think, and we could touch on this later on around the AI, the AI innovation that's actually happening.
We'll get there, yeah.
But I want to buy versus build because it's just more cost effective and scalable for what I want to do. So when it comes to SASE, yes, we consume SASE, but we only consume SASE for remote services. Right?
Okay.
So just to give you an indication, right? As I said, 98% of my connections go natively over the internet. For an 800,000 person organization, my client to site VPN footprint is less than 5%.
Okay. But firewall as a service, SWIGs, CASBs, all that stuff, you buying it and implementing it?
So in our data centers, I'm consuming native. I'm not putting third-party products in there, right? The only things I actually physically buy are appliances in my offices, and that's it. No,
but I'm talking about in your VMs, or I don't know if you call it containers or how you done it.
I use cloud native. I don't use third-party firewall.
So cloud native meaning all your workloads go into microservices and Kubernetes oriented?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So you really don't even have old workloads?
No, we have old workloads, but I wouldn't have, so to put it, your traditional firewall, right? So to think about your cloud architecture.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put a Fortinet firewall in there or a Palo Alto firewall and segment off it, your web, your app, your DB. No, I'll use firewall security groups, right?
Okay.
Consume natively from AWS, right, as part of their services. I go to Azure, I'll use security groups as part of it. I would not be basically shoehorning the traffic all through a third-party appliance in order to do that.
But how do you know that these third parties, because we've been doing our SASE cert, and we've been testing vendors, and we've not tested the hyperscalers, but how do you know this stuff functions right? Because we've actually, and I can't disclose who, but during our testing of threats, evasions, malware, so on, we find that there are holes, and we find, we've worked with now and we've certified top 5 vendors right now. We're adding more, and the providers also are inheriting it for now, and then we'll be testing the providers. How do you know? Do you have a way of testing this?
Yeah. So I don't think any security solution is 100% bulletproof, right? Which is why we firmly believe in a security in depth type of approach, right? So the firewall is just one element of it, right? So we use the cloud native firewalls to do that, but then you've got workload protections in place as well,
of course,
right? That we can identify. So then by taking the logs from your workloads, taking the workloads from your firewall logs, taking the workloads from your endpoints as well, right? Because we have that flexibility. Correlating all that data together is that what gives us the insights as to, okay, is something untoward happening here? Do I have a vulnerability? That's how we manage the ever-changing threat.
And so you have a SOC to do all of that, and then do you have an emergency response team too?
Correct.
Oh wow, amazing. Very, very impressive.
Yes.
And of course, you're massive and huge, you can do all that. Now, we should get to AI here in a short, and I want to get back to the internet on provisioning the internet, because really, at MEF, we've been doing all of this as a managed services, but you don't need that because you're doing it all yourself. But let's go to AI for a second before we get to and coming to an end here. So what is your take on AI? Where are you using? Because I think we talked about, do you really trust AI and building models and training models in a public hyperscaler? Or do you really want to have a private cloud in a data center? And then do you need GPU as a service? Or are you going to start building your own clusters with GPU? And any thoughts about this?
Pascal, that's a loaded question.
I know. No, and it should be another episode.
It should. Look, I think in all of my technology career, I think AI is that one space that is truly disruptive, and the level of innovation is happening so rapidly. I've not seen it happen anywhere else. The reason why I say that here is you're typically having to buy things today like GPUs, and then 3 months later, there's some type of service for you to consume, right? So the dilemma as an enterprise you get into is, do I take a step back and wait, right, for the market to decide what's going to happen, or do I lead, which is what we as Accenture have typically always done, and buy and then see, help shape the market. So yes, we've purchased with GPUs. Do we want to buy, sticking with our principles of how we consume cloud and the evolution we've seen in cloud? Yes, I want to consume this as a service as much as possible.
GPU as a service.
Correct, GPU as a service as much as possible. And I think that has to be opened up and made available more for the private clouds than the public.
Of course, because of the data sovereignty.
Correct, and I think that's what we've seen more and more. I think everyone is scared around, how is my data being used with AI, right? How am I going to provide access to people on a shared infrastructure if GPUs are being shared? So, as part of our AI refinery, which is our Accenture asset that we sell to the market, we have multiple offerings, both public and private. And what we do, the demand we're seeing is more for the private GPU as a service type of offerings than the public, even though people want to be able to flex and see that.
Yeah, and actually I've been saying that in my strategy deck to all the board tab, and you'll see it, the ELC and all so on. So I just want to, just a little bit more, and then we should probably coming to an end here, but because it's a very fascinating topic. So what about like the edge? Because you don't have a lot of really sensitive latency edge requirements. Like you think about, factories or smart warehouses or including smart cities and things like that. Because what are your workloads? Are mainly, for Accentures, are mainly consulting kind of practices?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't know this. I mean, we have different divisions within Accenture, and Accenture Song is where we do a lot of our, we actually do a lot of media editing and media capabilities and marketing. So just to give you an example, we did a lot of the rendering and the graphics behind Stranger Things.
Oh.
Right? So
I've never known that.
Yeah. So Accenture Song had a huge part to play in that. So when it comes to edge type capabilities, they require high CPU capabilities, low latency out at the edge in order to do all the video rendering, the editing, and those type of capabilities. So yes, even within Accenture, we do have those type of unique workloads. Within that, we also have an Industry X side of our organization where we help create product for car manufacturing. So manufacturing is something that we do. A lot of people don't know that. So we have OT type of capabilities that we have to manage and design for, and we have those capabilities that we support.
So do you actually go and build, and since you own the edges in the buildings, do you build MECs, multi-axis edge compute with GPUs, put them in your own buildings and then run it?
So we haven't got to a stage where we're pushing GPUs out at the edge yet, but we have this architecture which we call thick edge, thin edge. We call them the PICs, private internal clouds. And again, my strategy behind this is that I want to consume edge as transparently and as seamlessly as I consume cloud.
Perfect. And I think you're going to have a great presentation here shortly from NVIDIA on this.
So, and that's what we do, right? So we have commercial models, and I have an architecture in place that enables me to spin up edge hardware with connectivity as and when I need it, wherever I need it.
So coming to an end, at MEF, we've been doing obviously this whole network as a service. We have the underlays of all transports, including DIA internet, carrier Ethernet, wavelengths. We have an overlay of SD-WAN, which you're not using. This is all as managed. And then we also have the SASE, cybersecurity, SSE. Now our multi-cloud is going very much to the AI because we think that's where there's opportunity. We'll talk about that later. We won't have time here. But we also have the automation aspect where enterprises can buy, the business access, give me a price quote for this address. I want to order it, these circuits for IP, for, carry Ethernet, wavelengths, and so on. Where do you think there's a role for standardization in that?
100%, yes. I mean, if I can now, for example, we talk about multi-cloud, right? But I can deploy workloads consistently across multi-cloud using things like Terraform. One language, 3 different clouds. Why can't I have a consistent way to deploy circuits or consume circuits, leveraging an open standard to do that? And I think what MEF is doing here is hugely powerful, right? It saves me the time to go and get a quote from each different telco provider, get them to provision it, if I can do that all via code by myself, leveraging open standards.
So do you want infrastructure as code and network as code, or do you want actual APIs, or do you want that abstraction of the DevOps principle?
All of the above.
Oh, you want all the above?
All the above.
Because good, I'll cover all that.
Yeah, because I think it's different. I think different enterprises require different levels of flexibility based on their maturity and the skill sets that they actually have.
So do you implement in your whole procedure GitOps?
Yes.
And so with GitOps, do you implement Terraform and
yes.
all the NetOps?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
GitOps and infrastructure as code and network as code.
Yeah, and that's the whole living in the cloud principles. Everything is code driven.
Yeah.
So when we're shifting left, we basically have this concept of day zero secure, where nothing gets deployed in the public cloud without it having its code scanned, conforming to my standards, which are basically infrastructure sitting in a repo, and that gets deployed. And that can extend to circuits, right? So, the circuits we want to go and get provisioned, any additional services I want to have added as part of a circuit. If it's just an API call as part of that infrastructure as code instantiation, brilliant.
And I think that's more on the configuration and things like that. But what about the idea that before you get all to there, which I love the idea, what you're saying, network as code, infrastructure as code, you still have to be able to say, I want to buy, give me a price quote for the address and order it.
Yes.
Those are just APIs.
Correct.
Right?
They're just APIs.
MEF standardizing those.
Correct.
And we standardize in the ecosystem, we're standardizing in the enterprise.
Yes.
So you see value in that?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, good. Well, I think we can go on for hours. This is just phenomenal. So, I really want to thank you, Amo. It's you just fabulous conversation and topic, and I really look forward to maybe having another episode on AI and how you see that, but in the future. But thank you for our first inaugural Enterprise Edition, and I think our listeners are going to be so fascinated.
No, I really appreciate it. It's been insightful, and thank you.
Thank you for listening to Executives at the Edge, brought to you by Amplify. Be sure to follow, share, and leave a review. Catch every episode on your favorite platform or visit us at amplify.net.